Thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Wilson.
And I'm Chris Ehmke.
And I'm Jaden McKinley.
And you're listening to Diesel Performance Podcast. Guys, today we're going to be diving in, talking about a Big Block Cummins. And if you don't know what the Big Block Cummins is, hold on to your seats. This is a pretty wild story. Chris, we were here when this truck first came in and when this idea first started getting floated around.
Yeah.
I'll give a quick synopsis. So 2016, I want to say, roughly 2016, we started flirting with the idea of getting into UCC. I think 2015, we had offered to get in with a regular cab LB7 that we had taken out to the Texas Mile. It made about 1,000 horsepower on a big twin turbo kit and a healthy fuel system. But as time went on, even through 2015, we realized it was not going to be competitive at UCC. They were hitting too big of numbers too early on. The Cummins guys were just owning that. Yep. This is like LaVon Miller's second year of crushing it at UCC. So,
and coming off of multiple wins at Diesel Power Challenge. So
I think three-peated at Diesel Power Challenge and then was already on his second win at UCC. So we decided, hey, let's get out of this Duramax. Everybody's fucking with Cummins. Nick had this crazy idea. Let's not do a 5.9 or a 6.7. Let's pull an engine out of a semi and use that in a truck.
So he propositioned me for a project like this 2 years prior in my 0759.
Yeah.
And he's had this idea just kind of brewing in the back of his mind for a while. So fast forward, a Craigslist deal that went south ended up turning around, and we have this cool silver 3500 Ram with a flatbed.
What do you mean Craigslist deal that went south?
So I was sent to the south side of Chicago.
Okay.
To go look at a truck that was sent to me in a sales ad that Nick's like, dude, this is a good deal. And truck looked nice in the photos. Go there to go look at it. Dude lives in Illinois, has a Michigan dealer tag, dealer license, whatever. Go to look at the truck. The truck is a bone stock, 100-some thousand mile vehicle. The key doesn't come out of the ignition. There is a push button start jumping the whatever ECM security to get the starter to engage. And that was the first, and it was just like a red push button that was just dangling in the dash. Right?
It wasn't even mounted.
No.
Yeah, no, it was just two wires hanging down to a push button that you had to hold to actually push.
So me and a buddy went down to go look at this thing, drove it around, drove nice. The push button thing kind of wigged me out, right? We come back, park it. I, negotiate. Looking over the truck again, go to refire it up after it's been sitting, and no crank, no start. So banging the button, nothing. Key, of course, doesn't do anything. Now there's a truck that I'm halfway through purchasing that's sitting in a lot of a random bank that does nothing. With a guy who says he has a dealer license in Michigan, barely speaks, fluent English for that matter. It was just a shit situation. So I'm irritated.
Clean title?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm sitting there pissed off, wasted a Thursday, I'm out here, whatever. I call Nick. I'm like, yo, this isn't going to work out. Here are the reasons why. Truck doesn't even start. I'm fucking done. I'm leaving. Well, take your emotion out of this, relax. Typical Nick line for me. And, let's figure this out. I'm like, no, there's nothing to figure out. I'm leaving. I'm not doing this. I'm not coming back with the trailer. I'm not coming back. I'm not fucking with this guy. I'm done. So I leave, probably get about 20 minutes out, and the seller of the truck calls back, says, hey, one of the wire grounds for the push button had fallen out. It wasn't making contact. That was the issue. It starts and runs. Come back. I'll make it worth your while. Let's make a deal. So because I'm a good person, of course I call, my boss back, say, hey, the guy was able to get the truck started. I really don't want to turn around. He goes, no, you're turning the fuck around.
Do you know I have gone out for years before you started? I was the guy who went out to go look at these project trucks, and every single time I call back and said, this isn't a good deal, we should walk away, he said, go buy it. Yep. And every time I call back and said, I don't know, it's pretty cheap, I had this LB7 that was clearly blown head gasket.
So reverse psychology or something.
And I was like, hey, the guy wants $3,000 for it, I'm here with a tow truck. We paid a tow truck to drive out to Indiana. You want me to just come home with this thing? He's like, no, just pass. This sounds like a headache. So yeah, I'm really glad you took that over.
So we ended up getting it back. Yeah, well, that retired from that. But yeah, short story. We ended up bringing it back. The truck ran and drove. Got it for a real good price. I mean, market value in a truck like that back in 2015 was, for a 4-wheel drive truck was still, $30,000-$40,000.
Yeah.
And I want to say we were in the teens for this truck, and had a real nice flatbed. I mean, tire tread was nice. I mean, it was a work truck, right? Tradesman edition, but it was a nice truck. And we brought it back. We called it Silverback, was the nickname for the truck. We found some 22.5 semi wheels that were shaved down to 22 and slapped them on there. And I mean, we ripped that thing for a solid year. And it's crazy to think back, and you think of like 2014. I started with this company in 2014, and all of everything that happened in 2014, 2015, and maybe a bit of 2016 seems like it was a 10-year span, but it was really just in a couple of years.
Sure.
So the truck, from what I remember, it did a lot of sitting. It did some dynoing. It just kind of was like I'm
pretty sure it ran
truck.
Engines back and forth to Pfeiffer's.
It did for a minute. Yeah. And then, again, this UCC idea came about, and there was an auction, and we found a semi with an 8.9 liter, and we're like, yo, this is the truck, right? It was cheap enough that we were able to get it for the right price. We could make some money back because it was a cab chassis 3500, so it had the Ison trans and the 6.7 Cummins, which we were able to sell those things and recoup a really good portion of the money that was initially invested into the purchase price of the truck.
Yeah.
And
budget was a real big concern up front in the planning stage.
Oh yeah. And then I just remember thinking, how do you piece a motor like that? Like, that engine's got to be so much bigger compared to a 6.7 liter. And then the initial process started, and we had the 8.9 and we had the 6.7 standing up right next to one another.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't that big of a difference. You're talking maybe 1.5 inches height difference and about 2.5 inches, maybe 3 inches max depth, length difference. Right. Which, I mean, as we're talking here, and I mean, Jaden, chime in, that's not much, but when it's in the engine bay, I guess it is.
Oh, yeah. Especially with the way Dodge likes to tuck the engines underneath the firewalls.
Yeah, so from a sales guy, like, it's not much.
Right. Well,
it's not much. But, it was a really cool project being part of that early on. There's a lot of, Cummins Forum stuff, and we've done podcasts kind of.
Well, I remember when they did the initial planning, I remember seeing Jason and Ryan Worley show up one day, and Nick, I want to say, and Rendon go into the conference room and close the door so that they could map out this master plan. Now, UCC, obviously our listeners have heard us talk about UCC a lot. You got a drag race, you got a dyno, you got a sled pull. You earn points for each of those events. Then at the end, they total them all up and see who wins. Back then, the racers were scattered. UCC always has been mostly guys who know how to race or have a race truck and then figure out a way to do the other events. But there was this idea that nobody was good at sled pulling. And I think for the first several years of UCC, that was very true.
I mean, I think the theory with the game plan that they put together was horsepower and torque is a combined number.
Yep.
Right. We had this elusive, crazy horsepower number that we wanted to achieve, but knowing about the displacement and the turbo configuration, that was going to back into a killer torque number, which we'll get into.
Yep.
And who gives a shit what we do with the drag strip? Let's kill it at the sled pull. That's what we want to set the truck up for. Let's maintain our Midwest roots and stick to that, and that's the recipe for success.
Yeah.
But
this truck, we'll give a little bit of a spoiler early on. This truck has never competed in UCC.
No, it's been to UCC though.
It's been to UCC
for show the year that we had some issues, which we'll get into.
It's just misleadingly named the UCC truck.
Well, we still talk about that to this day, Jaden.
Yeah.
Like, why do we call it? That was the purpose of. But yeah, it's definitely never been a UCC truck.
We're trying to rebrand it as the Big Block Cummins.
Yeah.
That's.
I don't know how that's. I don't know. It has better roots as the Paw Paw truck at this rate.
Jesus. Okay. We'll get into
Paw
that. So this truck was a monster of a project because as WC Fab came into the picture, this idea that like, well, any fabrication idea you have is now possible. It's no longer like, what can we do in our shop, or what can our mechanics, who all have some sort of fab background, right? Jason, you've welded shit. I guess that's fab.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you can weld? Yeah, you're a
Yeah, you're a fabricator, right? I think that's about the standard we had prior. And then WC Fab came into the picture, and it was like, well, all of these crazy ideas are now possible. So
it goes further than that, though. You have to think, right? We have an older truck ECU, not from that truck.
Yep.
Right? We have an engine, not from that truck. Right? We have a transmission, not from that truck. We have the injector pumps that are operating that engine's fuel system, not originally from that engine. Okay? And how do you get all that to work? That's a standalone harness, right? There's all of these things that are those small attention to detail. There's really nothing on that truck that you can go and just buy.
Yeah.
Everything from the Exergy to the Whirly to what we did in-house, everything is a one-off, and there was no blueprint or pathway to say, hey, this is going to work or this is how you do it.
That's right.
And that's the big thing to take away, I think, from something like this.
Yeah. So, Jaden, talk to us a little bit about the first time this was together. I don't think you were with the company yet, but I think you're brushed up on the history of it. We put this truck together. What did the first configuration look like?
So, like, initially out of the semi or after the motor got built?
Yeah, after the motor got built and got put into the truck. Once they had the truck together, what was the build?
So I think at that point it was almost 10.5 liters, right?
Yeah, 10.4, I'm pretty sure.
But that was still original rod still. We were on stock rods with that?
Yep. Did a stock rod, and then, the basically different sleeves in the block, bigger piston to get to that displacement, some custom studs. Worley did a, real crazy triple S500 turbo kit on it. So...
Yeah, so the triple S500 kit, I think that's what everybody sees first. When you pop the hood on
they
this
don't.
thing,
They see two.
That is
They get
true.
confused. You have to point out the third one. You have to point out the one in the back.
I didn't see it at first either. First time I ever seen the truck, I was like, oh, twin turbos. And Tommy's like, no, there's 3 in there.
You have to I Spy.
Oh,
you have to I
there
Spy.
it is.
Yeah, which is cool because it's on a custom tubular header setup. I mean, everything that they did was super, super unique. Exergy came in and did some custom one-off injectors. They don't deal with ISL, ISM, style injectors. And then to say, hey, we need the output equivalent to a 500% over. The one thing that's unique with that specific engine is, yes, it's a common rail, but it doesn't run a CP3. So like any other Cummins, you have your factory pump and the factory location. It sits off the driver's side of the engine, off the front cover. Attention to detail wise, if you look at that engine, it's actually welded and capped off altogether, and we have 2 pumps that are externally ran, with a belt off, the front balancer. And they are overdriven to maintain the appropriate, volume of fuel that's needed for the power that we were hoping to achieve. And those are 2 14-millimeter pumps. So when you pop the hood on that thing, there are some crazy effing fuel lines, and there's these crazy pipes, and there's, the guillotines, the shutoffs for the S500s. Like, there's just some crazy, stupid shit going on that thing.
Well, even just when it's sitting there with the hood closed and the air-to-water intercooler
just sitting in front of
casing
the
is
cut-up grill.
Yeah, cut through the grill and sticking out with a big WC Fab logo on it. It looks nasty.
And it's crazy because you get under the truck and you see this like crazy 1-inch garden hose going from the engine to the back of the car to the the bed of the truck, and vice versa. And we have like metal bent lines for trans fluid and the water tank, and it's literally this Frankenstein truck. And I remember the first initial test drive in that truck. I remember the first spool up in the parking lot of the old shop in that truck, and the sound that thing makes, and the aggressiveness, the just robustness of that truck. You can tell that you can't hide the cubic inches of that engine.
No.
Just like you can't hide the cubic inches of, any gasoline big block, anything like that. You hear a big block or big displaced motors, it's a big displaced engine.
Oh, especially just idling in the shop. I mean,
it
it's got
echoes.
Such a throatiness to it. Like, you can feel it.
That is the first time where I understood, and I've been around automotive, for a, better part of half my life, over half my life now. I came from the world of, small displaced motors, add turbochargers, make up the difference. It's cool. I now at, 33 years of age, cubic inches is the best way to make power. And that truck and that theory that Nick was able to prove to me, taking, 10 liters of displacement, that comes out to what, 630, 640, something like that. And you can get an S500 turbocharger to spool up at 1,500 RPM is just stupid.
Yeah.
It's the age-old saying, there's no replacement for
That's
displacement.
That's exactly it. And I remember...
That is the driving motto of this truck, right? It's there's more is better.
Yeah. And I remember being like, man, how's that even possible? And he's like, there's fucking Folgers coffee cans pushing up and down, It's like the size of the piston, But, we ended up not making it very far. I think like a week before UCC, my mind's a blur. I don't know if 2015 was the first year, or if it was 2016 was the first year, but whatever the first year was, it was that following year that we were going to be bringing the truck.
Yeah, 16, 17 rings true to me.
And, we had a misfortune. There's a video on YouTube. Well, we documented all of it, but there was a stock rod in that motor. Motor went out the side of the block, ate the cam. Rods were all angled.
It exploded the back corner of the block apart. Just so that people know, this wasn't like a little hole in the piston or like a knocking rod and you pull it apart and you have like bananas for rods. You're like, oh, how terrible is this? No. This was an explosion that happened that blew the piston and rod through the back corner of an 8.9 liter block or whatever you want to call it at that point.
I'm pretty sure 8.3 and 8.9 are the same block, which is cool. It's just, rod, piston, whatever. But regardless, an ISL, ISM block.
Yeah. It dropped it apart. And we had that block sitting around the shop for years. Yeah. It may still be floating around on a pallet somewhere, but we're going
to reuse it one day. I think.
Right. We actually hauled that truck from Chicago all the way down to Indianapolis for UCC.
Such a far drive.
For me, bro, 30 minutes is like my max, and that's my commute. But we hauled it all the way down on a trailer just to have it at our booth at UCC so we could show people like, hey, we built it. It was really cool.
It is real.
Look, it's got a 10-foot bed and cool wheels.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something we could back into, right? Like, the truck is unique. When the engine was being swapped, we're getting ahead of ourselves with all of this, but it runs a 47 RE transmission, from Firepunk with a reverse manual valve body with a ratchet shifter. Yep. It has a full cage. The bed was extended 2.5 feet, and the frame and the bed was. So it's a regular cab, extra long bed. It is a unique truck, and it has a set of 35s, and it has 22-inch wheels. Like, it's proportioned in its own right, but it's very unorthodox when you look at it.
So many people look at that truck too and don't like, if you catch it from the back angle sideways, you'd be like, oh, that's just a regular cab 6.7, because that's kind of what it looks like. And then as you start to look at it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, why doesn't the bed liner fit? And they had to extend and do this weird cut with this extra 2 feet of bed liner back here. And they're like, oh wait, why is this radiator standing sideways and sticking out of this bed and blocking the back window? And what's this big tank that looks like it should be for fuel, but I believe is for water here in the back?
The other weekend, I caught somebody walking by, and that radiator in the bed draws all the attention in the world. But they were walking by, and I heard the guy go, I didn't know they made it dually long bed like that in the single cab. And I'm sitting there thinking, they didn't.
Well, we're going to get to that part of this, because that's where you get to shine and talk about stuff that we've never had the experience, because we never got behind the wheel of that thing at a sled pull, and you did.
Yeah.
So, we'll fast forward. Let's fast forward a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we window the block.
10.4 liter blows up. They do another motor. They do this crazy, again, Frankenstein one-off, John Deere connecting rod, dry sump oiling system, 10-liter displacement this time.
It only took a year to build it.
Only took a year. I mean, that's actually not bad, considering the resources that we had at that time.
Yeah.
But we get this thing together, and it just sits. It just sits. We really didn't do anything with it. And I want to say we got the vehicle together 2018-ish.
Sounds right.
We wanted to go sled pull, and the sled pull sanctions that we wanted to pull in were like, no. This truck is not legal for anything. It's too heavy, it's too long, it's too this, it's too that. It doesn't have the original motor. You're not.
We also didn't have any of the safety shit on it.
You know what?
Initially.
Fuck the safety shit. We just want to have a little bit of fun with our friends. So Short story, we ended up improving the vehicle, doing, drive shaft loops, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And 2019, we went to this local to us, right, with ISP, and the town is called Paw Paw. And it's a really cool sled pull event. It's hosted literally in the middle of a town, behind some people's homes, in front of a church. Like, it's just...
There are residential homes across the street. There is a bean field at the end of it, so you pull into a bean field.
It's literally your
If you watch
typical...
the
And
video,
there is
see
an
the house.
elementary school on the other side of you. That's where you are.
It is your typical Illinois small town.
Yes.
And this field this sled pull track is literally crammed in a field behind someone's house, and it's a fun time.
It's one of the best atmospheres I've ever been at for
and
a
it's
sled
the
pull.
end.
'Cause
It's
we
one
go
of
to
the
like
last
county
pulls.
fairs and
Oh, yeah.
stuff like that, and like the grandstands and all that. It's a cool setup, and I get it, but it does not have the intimate feeling of like a small town pull like Paw Paw.
Oh,
And
when they say the entire town's there,
The entire town.
is there.
But it's like, I feel like they strategically set that up towards the end of the year for that reason, because the county fairs are fun, don't get me wrong, but I've never gone to like our Boone County Fair or our McHenry County Fair, Lake County Fair, and be like, oh man, like, this is a homey feel, and we live in those bordering towns.
Yeah.
You go somewhere like Paw Paw, and it's like, you feel at home. Like,
Well,
it
you
feels
also-
very
yeah.
normal.
You're so close to the spectators in Paw Paw
Yep.
compared to the fairgrounds.
Yep.
Where like you can hear the cheering at the
yeah.
truck. Like
Yep.
that's a rare feeling
No, it
to
is.
be there.
Now, I remember 2019, we had the truck out. Right?
Yeah.
That was like, it was a brush pull. They just, we could hook up and just showcase
Exhibition
this
only.
project.
We weren't
Yeah.
in a class.
And Nick was super excited to get it out. It was a purpose, a reason to get it out. And I remember the truck pulling up, the announcer announcing it, and the crowd dead ass silent. Right?
Yeah.
They just wanted to see this thing go down. And I don't think I've seen any other truck there that day that maintained and got up to speed as quickly as that truck did. And then just the sled was nothing to that thing. Like, that thing just fucking dragged the trailer, dragged the sled across the field, across the the course, right, whatever you want to call it, like it wasn't even there. And then had another failure, but not the motor this time.
Right. Well, I just so I got to be lucky enough to hold the camera down at the end of the track that day, and as this thing screamed, and I do mean screamed. We talk about turbos making whistle noises and all this. Yeah. You've never fucking heard something like this. 3 S591s at full tilt with him all the way on the throttle.
Dude, I'll tell you what.
Barreling towards you. I generally make fun of sled pulling because I say it's like, it's 20 miles an hour. How exciting could it be to watch? No, this was fucking exciting.
I'll tell you what. I know what it's like. I've owned a Duramax. I've owned Cummins that had S500s in them, and just the single 500. The sounds that they make is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
that is nothing compared to what that truck sounds like. Those Chargers, that engine, that expelling exhaust note coming out the tailpipe is just. You can't put into words because you can't experience it, because there's nothing else like it to experience. You have to see that firsthand.
That's right. All right, Super Mechanic Jaden, what went wrong on Nick's sled pull? What failed?
So it looked like the transfer case had broke, but it was the tail housing of the 47 completely snapped off. And because I think originally what happened, it's hard to say what came first, the chicken or the egg, but the rear drive shaft wrapped up, and I think that caused it to bind, put all the load on the front drive shaft, and the tail housing was nothing. I mean, it snapped the tail housing right off the transmission.
The video was violent. The video that you gained at the end that you captured at the end of the track, like it was just
it came out with force.
I don't know what mile an hour the truck was doing, but I guarantee that thing was 40 mile an hour going down the track.
It looked like
it was fast. And to any non-sled pullers out there, that's quick.
20 is fast.
20 is fast.
20 is fast at a sled pull.
And this thing's just booking going down the track. And all of a sudden you hear a ping, pop, and a doom, and the truck just dead in its fucking track.
And that crowd go, oh.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing, if that hadn't happened, that truck
was in the beans.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And, I remember that. I remember the whole staff was there that day. Everyone upstairs, a bunch of the guys down in the shop. And that was just one of those, that's one of like those last, pre-COVID, sled pulls that we had gone to, and it was a great time, and it was cool to showcase the truck, but definitely not so great for the pocketbook side of things, and the repairs as far as that goes.
Well, I laugh because in the beginning, it's like budget was such a big talk when we first started talking. We have to sell this ASIN so we can afford this project. And then as we start to build it, it's like budget's just a joke.
Yeah.
Budget's just like
just a word.
It means nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now then COVID hit, so 2020 happens. People are working from home. Business is going gangbusters. Guys are still buying parts for their trucks, but like really, this project was in the background. There was no UCC that year.
There was a good. Jaden. This is at this point in time, the timeline, but there was a good 2.5, 3 years of dust on that truck.
Yeah, when I first started the truck, they said there was, clearly a decent level of dust on it. It hadn't been touched in a while. There was no transmission in it. No drive shafts.
We ripped parts out of the truck for customers' trucks.
Yeah,
to help them out.
Didn't we fix the trans and then sell that fixed trans?
Yeah, we had another trans done, and we ended up selling it to a really good customer of ours out in Michigan who wanted to do,
with the LV7.
Call it a Duraflight. I'm probably aging myself saying that, but basically putting a 47 in a Duramax.
Yeah.
So he ended up doing that, and he wanted to ditch the Allison, and
that was also a fast truck.
That was a cool truck too. Much smaller turbos, not as cool noise, but so we did that, and honestly, like the last few months or whatever of getting the truck back together, I just remember seeing the truck being worked on, but I had no idea that they were planning anything to
I
get it back
think
out.
that truck coming in was the only reason the trans got built, because DJ was already in 47 mode.
That's true.
He had to build
That's true.
that. And he just did them both at the same time.
So let's fast forward to what happened a couple weeks ago. For one, nothing against you. You're a great mechanic. You do great work. How did you sell Nick on you taking the truck out?
So I think I didn't sell him at all on me taking it. I just kept harassing him.
Okay.
Because I was like, dude, we did all this work. We put a whole trans in it. It's sitting there.
Damn, you're good.
Yeah,
you're good.
Yeah. Well, what I really got him was I fired it up and took it out in the parking lot because he was complaining that the shifter wasn't lining up with the gears properly. So I went and adjusted all that. And I was like, hey, why don't you take it for a ride, make sure it's shifting good, I don't have a lot of seat time in this thing. I don't know how it's exactly supposed to feel, So he got out there, and next thing you know, he's building boost and does a couple launches in the parking lot. And he came back in, and this is probably still 2 months out. He came back in with a smile on his face, and I was like, "Yeah, how'd it do?" He was like, "It felt real good." So I don't even think sled pulling started yet. And I was like, "So what do you think about us maybe making a hook on it?" And he's like, "Yeah, maybe."
Yeah.
So then, again, I just kept poking the bear. I was like, "Hey, Paw Paw, we can take it out. A lot of people have been asking about it."
Yeah.
And you just typical, "Yeah, maybe." And then it was something. We were doing something, and I brought up the truck again to him. I was like, "Yeah, what about the UCC truck?" And he kind of just did his, quiet nod. And I'm like, "Ooh, that might mean something."
Yeah.
Because usually it's an all right, like he's like clearly sarcastic, or it's an outright no. But this time he did the old. And it's like, maybe I will get him out there. And at this point, I'm still thinking I'm just gonna get him to show up. I'll take the power stroke or whatever, and get a bunch of people out there. And then out of nowhere, he came up to me and he's like, "So I'm tossing around the idea of having you pull the UCC truck." And I was like, right away, "That's a great idea."
You're so fucking smart, man.
So did he get you on the hook for if it breaks, you fix it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay. So there's for every
he's
good
like, "Well, it's
deal,
most
he has
likely
an
gonna
angle."
break."
Here's what's funny though. If he drove it and it broke, Jaden would be the guy to fix
Yeah.
it. So it's like really like
might as well
nothing
fix it.
changed. Yeah.
So how did that day go? What happened?
So man, is it a difference compared to like pulling the power stroke or a relatively stock truck? I had to buy 20 bags of ice just to keep the chill tank cold because, of course, oh my God, hottest day of the weekend or hottest day of the year, it seemed like. It was 96 degrees or something, super hot. There is no shade cover in Paw Paw.
No.
So whatever. It was a good time. We go out there trying to like figure out where we're in because, again, we're exhibition hooking. The thing is 1,500 pounds over the heaviest truck class. So there's like, you can't even shave that weight if you wanted to. So I meet up with a couple of the tech guys. We get where I am. So I'm pulling roughly halfway through the day. And I think we were there 6 or 7 hours. So, it's like 3.5 hours after we unload, I finally pull. So a lot more like involved with like keeping an eye on the ice tank, kind of keeping temps up, but not. I don't want to get the trans super hot because again, it's just a lot of stuff because I'm so used to the stock format where this is like purpose-built race. So I'm like, I'm checking all these things and whatever, everything goes pretty good. And we get up to the line and rolling up, and man, it was hot. And a fire suit and a helmet, and that day, no AC, no airflow really through the cab. It's like, oh my God. Which
just adds to the nerves. It adds to the whole...
So I'm thinking of everything that can go, and everybody that talked to me about this truck was like, yeah, it's going to break. It wasn't like, oh, it might break. They're like, yeah you're going to break it.
Yeah.
And then I don't think the bet was on if I was going to break it. It was on what I was going to break. So you get to the line, and like you said, the power of the thing, the way it came out of the hole, I never felt anything like it. I mean, it came out of the hole as like I was drag racing. Like there was nothing even back there.
Yeah.
So, and surprise, thing lights super fast. Like you would think 3 S500 turbos, I'm going to be on the line for 5 minutes. Yeah. I think I even asked Nick beforehand. I was like, hey, like if I'm building boosts, like how long is going to be too long? Like if I'm sitting there on the brakes for 2 minutes, like our EGT is going to run away on me. And he's like, oh no, you'll have no problem building boosts, which I thought was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you sure? Like, how long has it been since you drove this? Like, I feel like S500.
No replacement for displacement.
Yeah,
you know,
that's it, man.
And no, I mean, she came alive right away. And because he's got, it's like a proprietary manifold on there, right?
Yeah.
That he designed. But yeah, so thing comes out of the hole like crazy. I mean, power like I've never felt. I mean, being inside the thing was insane. I mean, it felt like the thing almost wanted to do a kickflip, the way the thing just pulled up. But going, hit third, lock up the converter, keeps taking off like a rocket, and next thing I know, RPMs are on the red line, and you could just feel like you're losing the inertia.
Yeah.
So I unlocked the converter, relock it real quick, just thinking, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I was like, maybe I could relock the converter and it'll be fine. Same thing, bounces the limiter, so I just threw it down the second and finished the pull. So it was only like a 250 pull, it wasn't anything far. But yeah, so after I limped it off the line, pulled the dipstick out, and there was metal on the dipstick. So I was like, well, that's never a good sign.
But you were able to drive it back on the trailer?
Yes.
So progress.
Yeah.
Which, at first, when I got up to the trailer, it was like, nope, I'm not moving no more. I had a little bit of like roll in second if I really got after it. First and third were gone. So I got it up to the dovetail, and I was like, oh, let's let it cool down and wait, and then get the winch out if we have to. After it cooled down, pulled right up on the trailer on its own power.
Nice.
So I was like, that's... I feel good about that.
Yeah, that's a win. That's a win.
We ended up pulling the trans out of it, and it looked like a bushing had walked out of the stator, and the pump wiped out one of the seals, and then the pump was gone, trying to do everything it could to make line pressure, and it just wasn't happening.
So it sounds like it wasn't an expensive mishap.
Compared to all the failures before, I think this is the best one.
Well, this is your new bargaining tool for next year.
Yeah. I'm already working. I'm thinking of the sales pitch in my mind already.
I mean, you're clearly a natural, so that's awesome.
What a blast. What a cool truck. I love talking about this truck. I got to jump in it and do a couple of test launches with Jason in the parking lot as well. Yeah. Honestly, most fun I've ever had in a truck. Nice. Even just in a parking lot. Like straight up just in the parking lot of just spooling it up and launching across the parking lot, which is way too small of an area for a truck with that much power and stock brakes. Yeah, it was fucking badass. It is one of the coolest vehicles I've ever seen in my life.
And it gets crazy attention out there. I mean, I thought the Power Stroke got a lot of attention because they're like, oh, emissions on, like it's a real pretty truck. So people will always come up with the Powers, but dude, I mean, I don't think anybody could pass that truck
whether
breaking their neck or actually coming up. And
whether the spectator likes the shop, likes our mission statement, what we believe in, what we do, it does not matter. You can't deny that truck, and anybody and their sister comes and looks at it. Yeah. So it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, Jaden, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking some time out of wrenching and come up and talking to us.
Anytime.
For today, this has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Ehmke.
And I'm Jaden McKinley.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us today, guys. This has been Paul Wilson.
And Chris Ehmke.
Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I'll tell you the original story about that piece of shit.
Oh, really?
Me.